Welcome back to the PT Graduate Podcast. I'm excited to introduce my guest today, Mr. Jono Petrohilos. Welcome, Jono.
Rich, how are you, mate?
I'm really well. I'm really well. It's great to see you. It's great to be able to sit down and catch up and hear a little bit more from behind the scenes, really, because I think it would be fair to say most people listening to this who are mostly New Zealanders, few Australians, a couple of Canadians, a couple of Yanks, but generally this side of the world would know who you are. But for those who don't, be good to sort of just get a little bit of history, a little of backstory, tell me, I guess the interesting thing is tell us a little bit what you do now, but also how you got there, where did it all start for you?
Beautiful. Yeah. Let me dive into it. Off the bat, Rich, I just want to say thanks for having me on the show because, it allows me to speak about my favorite topic in the world, myself. So gotta thank you for that. So yeah, bit of background. What I do is I run a education company called Fitness Education Online. We do two kind of things. One thing we do is we run CEC courses for personal trainers. I'm based in Australia. The accent might give it away, but these courses are actually recognized and registered all over the world, not just Australia. They're with Reps New Zealand. They're with CanFit Pro for the Canadian listeners.
Yes.
If there's any American listeners, they're with NASM, they're with AFA, they're with ACE. So, they're online courses that are pretty much sold and delivered all over the world. So that's a major part of our business. We also run the Cert 3 and 4 in fitness over here in Australia, which is the certification you need to get certified over here. That's just Australian based because it's a little bit different wherever you are in the world.
Sure.
So they're kind of our two streams. In Australia, we help personal trainers get certified. And then if you're already a certified personal trainer, which most people probably listening to this podcast are, we've got CEC courses. So you're welcome to check out the website and check them out.
Yeah.
I can dive into the backstory if you want, how it started,
Yeah.
yep. Cool. All right. So I'll give the simplified version. My first kind of major role in the industry was running a boot camp. All right. I kind of worked in gyms before that. Did a little bit of work, but it was kind of minimum wage stuff, I'd be on the gym floor, I'd be, cleaning the treadmills, I'd be stocking the soda machines. Like looking back, it was a great job because I learned a lot from it. But at the time I hated it. You get, I don't know what it's like for the listeners or with you, Rich, but say, I got my qualifications. It's great. I'm going to train all these people and be this awesome superstar. And I'm cleaning the carpets and doing the bathroom checks, so it was, looking back, it was good, but at the time I didn't like it. But anyways, kind of got out of that and started running a boot camp. And I thought this is the dream. It was a franchise. So there were 75 different locations across Australia and New Zealand. But I wasn't very good at it. So take a guess what I was ranked, Rich. So you were ranked, all 75 locations were ranked, basically based on your retention. If you were, if you had the best retention, you were ranked number one. If you had the worst, you were ranked 75. Take a guess what I was ranked.
I hate to do this, John. I do know this story, and I know that it was 75, right?
Yeah. There you go. So I was ranked 75, right?
Yeah.
Was the worst boot camp instructor in the world in that franchise. And had to go to like a conference at the end of the year with all different 75 instructors. And I didn't want to go because I was ranked 75. I didn't want to go and kind of confront that I would be the worst person there. And also I was kind of like a bit intimidated of the people that I thought would be there. I was like, man, there's going to be, athletes and bodybuilders and supermodels and fitness models, and all these really good looking, fit, attractive people there, So I didn't want to go, but I bit the bullet and I went. And it was the best thing ever because off the bat, I had to have a meeting with the franchise owners. And they were like, Jono, you're coming 75th. What's going on? And I was like, it's not my fault. There's it's a competition. There's so many PTs now. There's these 24-hour gyms that are opening up, these budget gyms that are opening up. It's just too much competition in my area, And it was like, also, it's the marketing. You guys are meant to be doing the marketing. Like, you're hardly getting me any leads, and the leads that you're getting me are rubbish. And I was like, also, it's the weather. I'm here in Sydney. Like, it's not like you guys up here in the Gold Coast where it's good weather every day. Like, it rains in Sydney. It's cold. Like, who's going to go to a boot camp in winter? And they were like, look, Jono, we got some good news and we got some bad news. They're like, the bad news is as a boot camp instructor, You suck. You're coming 75th out of 75. But the good news is you can do something about it because at the moment, you're sitting here blaming everybody else but yourself.
Mm,
Maybe it's not the competition's fault that you suck. Maybe it's your fault. You haven't done enough to be better than the competition. They're like, what courses have you done? What conferences have you been to? And
mm,
I was like, I go to Filex every 2 years. That's like the Australian FitX. For the New Zealand
yeah,
listeners, it's kind of
yeah,
like saying, I go to FitX every year.
yeah,
And
yeah.
franchise owners are like, Johnny, that's like the bare minimum.
Mm,
Like that's what you need to do just to stay in the industry,
mm,
to
mm,
get your CECs.
yeah.
Like if you're doing the bare minimum, of course you're going to be down the bottom. And they were like, all right, the marketing. They're like, Jono, is it our leads that suck? Or is it you that aren't doing a good job at converting those leads? What are your sales skills like? What sales books have you read? What business courses have you done? What business mentors have you hired? And I was like, oh, uh, good point. And they were like, also, if our marketing is so bad, why don't you go and do some of your own? I was like, yep, okay, good point.
Mm, mm,
And then they're like, Jono, the weather. You're blaming the weather too. Like you can solve your biggest problem for $20. You can go out and hire a school hall for $20. You can solve your biggest problem for $20, but instead you're sitting here feeling sorry for yourself, blaming
mm,
everybody else but yourself. So
mm.
like you got anyone else to blame? The government, like, Donald Trump, COVID, back in 2012. So these things didn't even
Yeah,
exist, but it was kind of that.
yeah,
And they were like, look, John, your job's safe. But we ask one thing from you, all right? For the next 12 months, what we want you to do is stop blaming everybody else but yourself. If there's an issue, do something about it, right? You've mentioned the competition, right? Do some things find some things that you can do to be better than the competition.
mm,
You've mentioned the sales, right? What can you do to be a better salesperson? Mention the marketing. What can you do marketing wise? You've mentioned the weather. Go and find a school hall for 20
sure.
bucks.
Yeah,
But they were like, just do those, like take response. Got into a bit more. They gave a presentation about responsibility, accountability, whatnot. But that
yeah.
was kind of the message there. They were like,
Mm,
for 12
mm.
months, just don't blame anyone. It's yourself and do something about it. So am I talking? Do you want me to keep rattling on? Do you want me to,
Carry on. No,
explain?
no,
Yeah,
this is a good
cool.
story.
Awesome. Yeah, and there were a few things I did there. There were probably two major things. One thing, I think it was an exercise we did there. They were kind of like, um, think of a client that left. So think of a client that was training with you and then
Mm,
stopped training with you. And think of the hardest situation possible. Because there's always some easy ones, someone signs
mm,
up and you didn't do your onboarding correctly and whatever, and then they
mm,
don't find the play. Like, not one of those, find like the hardest one possible. And there was this one client that was like, I can't remember the exact situation, but it was along the lines of she was a netball player as well, right? So she
yeah,
kind of did the boot camp, I think over summer.
yeah,
And then it was more to get her fit for netball,
cool.
And then when netball came, training was the same times as boot camp, so she couldn't come.
Yeah.
And originally I was like, well, there's nothing I can do. Like she plays netball too. Like what can I do? Like there's nothing I could have done.
Mm,
But the franchise owners were kind of like, yeah, that's one way to look at it. But another way to look at it is what can you have done to make your boot camp so good that she would have quit netball for it? And I was
mm,
like, okay, yeah. I'm like, it's a good way to look at it. Because the way they kind of said it as well was like, look, is one of two things. Maybe you could have, maybe you couldn't have. Who knows, right? But at least if you did everything in your power, and that was your goal, your goal was to like, right, I want to make this boot camp so good. So this person's going to quit a sport that they've done their whole life.
mm,
Because you can play netball at any time. Like to get a boot camp experience like this, that's a once in a lifetime thing. Whether
mm,
she
mm,
stays or not is kind of irrelevant. If that's the service that I'm kind of pitching at, maybe
mm.
she will. But at least all those people that were previously 50-50, if that's the standard I'm going with. And then throughout the year, there was another kind of client who was actually moving to New Zealand for work,
Yeah.
right? And also, yeah, moving to New Zealand for work. And I was like, all right, here's an opportunity. I want to make this boot camp so good that she's not going to take that opportunity in New Zealand. She's going to cancel that because work is work. You can find a job anywhere. Like, a boot camp like mine, that's a once in a lifetime opportunity. So, and I knew she was leaving at the start. It was like a 12-week challenge thing. I knew she
Yeah.
was leaving at the start.
Yeah.
End of the 12 weeks, Rich. Do you think she stayed or do you think she moved to New Zealand?
She probably stayed.
Incorrect. She did move. But every single other person except for her stayed at the boot camp.
Right.
So the conversion rate was something like
It was good.
99%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I think the standard was 75. And a big part, and they're just kind of illustrating the point. It's less
Mm,
about if that person did or not, more just like if that's what I'm going for.
sure. Aim high.
Um,
Mm,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then along that kind of year, what I would do is a bunch of different CEC courses, right? It was like, all right, um, I need to get better at running a boot camp. Let me go on Google and type in, boot camp CEC course or whatever. And there was a boot camp CEC course. I went to that.
mm.
And it was great. Learned a bunch of workouts, a bunch of like bonding ideas. And as a result of that, I can't remember, like I did the math at the time and I was like, there's at least three clients that stayed with me because I did this thing here.
Ah.
And the cost of the course was like, I can't remember what it was. Let's call it $500.
Yep.
And the cost of a client signing up for the 12-week boot camp was about $500. So I was like,
Mm,
hold on. By me paying this $500, I've got like three times my money back.
mm,
Let me do more of these, So I
mm.
signed up for another one and then another
Ah,
one and then another one.
mhm.
And it got to the point, or anyway, cut a long story short, went back to that same conference a year later and it was then ranked number one out of
Seriously.
75.
In a year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep, in a year. And the
Gee.
retention rate, when I sucked, it was 30%,
Hmm.
right? I had 20 clients, and something like, what's the math? Six of them came back or something like that, six out
Yeah.
of 20. But then after a year, I had 100 clients and every single one of them came back. And
Mm,
obviously there's a lot of like kind of fine skills in there that I
mm,
learned, how to be a better boot camp instructor, better personal trainer, probably a better
mm.
person, better sales, better marketing.
Yes.
But the overarching kind of principle there is just taking responsibility for it. And I know we might get to tips later, but that's kind of the number one tip I can get.
Mm,
I think it's
mm.
okay not to be good. I'm going to use the word good. It's okay not to be good at what you do right now. Like if you've just finished, you've been in the industry for a year, like it's a bit unreasonable for you to be expected to be as good as someone who's, got 5, 10,
Yeah.
15, 20 years experience on you.
Yeah.
That's totally okay not to be good at what you do. I think what's not okay is to stay not being good,
Mm,
right? And I
mm.
think the key is to identify. Like if we go back to kind of and I'll dive into a bit what FAO does later if you want, but say
Right.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
even just that story there, even just from, running, being successful in the actual fitness industry side of things, is kind of like let me think how I can put this. Like, yeah, let's go back to those times when I was kind of blaming everyone else. I
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily wrong, like those things were probably true. There was
Mm, mm,
competition,
mm.
maybe the leads weren't great, the weather was bad, like they weren't
Yeah.
necessarily wrong things, but I
Mm,
just wasn't kind of taking the responsibility and being
mm.
like, hey, I'm not good enough, so I need to do something to be good enough. I think
Sure.
that's the key. I
Yeah.
think if you're not where you want to be, if you're sitting there and you're blaming everyone else, it may be true. It may be other people's fault, but it's not going to help you get better. Whereas if you can just say, hey, you know what? At the moment, I suck at what I do, but I'm not going to be here forever. I'm going to take whatever it takes to grow and grow and grow. And
Mm,
then kind of
mm, mm,
how fast you want to grow or how good you want to get, it's kind of up to you and,
mm,
what your goals are and whatnot. But I
mm.
think that's kind of the key there.
Yeah. I like.
Um, yeah. Do you want me to dive into FAO or do you want to delve into that a bit more? What do you want to do from
No,
there?
no, no. Was there more to that story? Like, you went back to the conference. You are now number
Yep.
one.
Yep. So
Pat on the
yeah,
back.
so yep, yep, yep. So that was great. And then just kind of continued growing, right? The
Cool.
next year I wanted to do the same thing again. So I just
Yeah.
kind of kept doing courses, kept upskilling, just kind of immersed myself with being the best boot camp instructor in the world.
Right.
Uh, Conference next year again was number
Yeah.
one again for
Yeah.
that year there. Also opened up a second location, so I know now had two different
Okay.
locations running there.
Hmm.
And I was gave a presentation at that second one as well, which was pretty cool as well, because it gave me
Mm,
that kind of leadership role. It was kind of
mm,
like, right, I'm good at this, like I can help other people do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the other boot camp instructors and even just personal trainers in general would just kind of ask me at that stage. They're like, Jono, like, how are you doing this? Like, we knew you two years ago, and you were the absolute worst. How are you running? How have you got like 150 clients and running two locations and winning these awards and that? And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, well, it's quite simple. I went to these, I did these 10 courses and these three conferences and these 10 books, and everyone's like, oh, yeah. And I get it from their side of things. Like it's kind of really hard to say to someone, hey, here's 10 courses you need to do and 10 books and whatever. And yeah, maybe there's a philosophy where it's like, hey, if you really want it, you can do it. But I
Mm-hmm.
also saw an opportunity there. And I was like, you know what? Out of all this stuff that I've learned, because also a lot of the stuff that I learned wasn't contextualized. So let's say,
Okay.
for example, the first couple boot camp courses I went to were, but then everything after that wasn't. Like, let's say, for example, I remember I did a course on kettlebells, how to be a kettlebell instructor. And I can't remember what it's called, maybe a 1 day course.
Mm-hmm.
And, the first part of the course, learn how to kettlebell swing, that's fine.
Yeah.
But as it kind of got on, it was so tailored for like one-on-one personal training in the gym, where it's kind of like, or you're running a class at the gym where everyone has their own kettlebell.
Right.
And if you're running like an outdoor boot camp and you've got 100 people, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not bringing 100 kettlebells, you know.
Yeah.
And also if I've got that, and also I'll put that in context as well. I didn't have 100 people at one session,
Yeah.
like I had 100 people signed up. I might have 40 people come to one session. I'd have two
Yeah.
trainers, so you've got
Yeah.
20 people each kind of thing. But even
Yeah.
with 20, like I'm not bringing 20 kettlebells down to the park, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
And if I've got 20 people, I'm not teaching Turkish get-ups and snatches and, so, and don't get me wrong, I learned some really good stuff at that kettlebell course, but out of the 100% of stuff taught at that course, it's maybe 10% that I could actually use in my boot
Sure.
camp.
Yeah.
I remember I went to like a kind of sales course as well, how to get good at sales.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very tailored for like you're working at a gym on the gym floor, you're
Mm-hmm.
paying rent, you're having you do a complimentary session with someone, you do a consult with them. Um, that's worlds apart from running a boot camp. Usually running a boot camp, you're not the person's either, finding you online, you're having a conversation on the phone. Maybe they're doing a free session in the group where there's 20 other people and you have a few minutes out. Like it's worlds apart. Once again, I
Yeah.
learned some really good stuff there, but out of the 100%, specifically for a boot camp, maybe
Mm-hmm.
10% of it was useful.
Useful. Yeah.
So I was like, what I can do is instead of recommending to people to do these 10 courses and 10 books and whatever, let me just contextualize everything that I've learned from these things specific to a boot camp setting. And I can kind of market it where it's like, I don't care who you are, you can't be worse than what I was, right? Because that's the other thing. I think also with a lot of and not even anything, not even just the fitness industry, anything in life. I think if someone is naturally good at something, it's often harder for them to teach it because it just comes so natural. I
Mm-hmm.
think I see this a lot in martial arts and in sports. Let's say someone's a great rugby player and it's just so natural for them to be great at rugby or football or whatever sport you watch.
Yeah.
If they're teaching someone that's uncoordinated and has no idea, it's almost like they're speaking a different language.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of like, hey, just step like this and move your body like this. And that's fine if that person's an athlete and they know their body inside out. But if the
Mm-hmm.
person's super uncoordinated, like, just can't do it. But if you
Yeah.
had someone that was uncoordinated, it's like, hey, I'm super uncoordinated. Here's how I think about it from an uncoordinated side of things.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
person kind of understand. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I was able to do. It's kind of like, hey,
Sure.
even if you have zero charisma, zero personality, zero sense of humor, here's how you can, still do stuff in sales like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're
Yeah.
not a quick thinker, here's how you can still, do stuff on sales. Hey,
Sure.
if you're not a great if you're more of an introvert, here's some things you can do to still run the session as an
Mm,
introvert.
mm, mm, mm.
Um, whatever. Like it's just if you're not naturally good at something, here's how you can do it.
Brilliant.
So yeah, because of that, and this is when I hooked up with Travis at the stage as well,
Yeah.
who I know you
Right.
also know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and we put together a course, how to run a successful boot camp, which was basically that, like everything I did from like zero to that there.
Yeah.
So I put that out there, and that's actually an interesting story too. You're cool if I just rattle on. You're cool
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. If
Yeah,
you've got a good story behind it, fire away.
awesome. So from there, I was like, right, I want to put together this course. I want to do it. It's something I'm passionate about. I think there's a gap in the market. And also, like, I didn't know this at the time, but looking back now, I realized there was demand for it
Mm.
because I would go to all these different courses, right? And every course I went to, there were 10, 15, 20 PTs there. So now when I know a bit more about business, I know people that will start up a business and it doesn't quite be successful, not because it's not a good business, it's just the market wasn't kind of there.
Yeah.
But looking back, it's like there was a market there, right? Like so
Mm.
many people come.
Mm.
But anyways, like I had the option at the time. I was like, do I want to do this face to face or do I want to do this online? Now, this is
Mm.
back in 2012, right? So
Okay.
online was nowhere near as big
Still,
as
yeah, yeah,
face to
yeah. Early
face. It
days.
was, yeah, and even then, like the biggest objection I would get back then, not so much the boot camp course. Oh, yeah, maybe, but even like more of the functional training courses, like personal trainers would inquire and they'd be like, "Oh, it's online. Can't do fitness online. What kind of silly idea is this?" So that's changed a bit now, especially since
Yeah.
COVID. But at the time, I was like, right, I can do this face to face, or I can do it online.
Mm.
And I was working 6 days at the time. The
Mm.
only day I had off was Sunday. And I
Mm.
was like, do I really want to give up my one day off? And
Mm.
actually, I remember I made a covenant with myself a few years back never to work Sundays because I did it when I was doing that gym role and it
Yeah.
just sucked, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I hear you.
yeah, yeah. I think it's okay if you're starting off, you're studying, it's maybe your
Absolutely.
first job or whatever, 100%
Mm.
go for it.
Mm.
But I think there's got to be a time in life where you need at least one day where there's
Yeah.
no work.
Yeah.
And I think the best day for that is Sunday. But anyway, it's like
Mm.
I was like, yeah, I don't really want to do that. And I was like, also, I feel there's a risk face to face. I was like, I got to find a venue, I got to hire the venue, I got to pay the venue, and then,
Sure.
what happens if no one comes? I
Mm.
still got to
Mm.
pay. Or worse still, what happens if one person comes? Then I actually have to. At least if no one comes, I can go home,
Yeah.
and chill out.
Yeah. You
One
still got to
person
do it.
comes, I still got to do it. So I was like, let me look into this online thing.
Mm.
So I went online, inquired a few things, whatever. Someone gave me a call and they were like a website kind of person. They were like, yeah, yeah, for sure. We can create a website. We can do your online course on the website. It's going to be 20 grand. And I was like, oh, don't
Jeez.
have, yeah, I was like, not worth the risk. I'm like,
Mm.
it's a lot of money. I don't know if it's going to
Mm.
work. Like, nah, screw it. Not going to
Yeah.
do this online thing. It's too hard.
Right.
Um, and then I was, scrolling through Facebook, and an ad came up just about like an ebook, right? Hey, purchase this ebook, whatever. And once again, 2012. So ebooks, they weren't an obvious thing like they are now.
Mm. Mm.
And also I wasn't really in that world. I was more in the boot camp, fitness, personal training world, So I didn't know what
Mm.
an ebook was. And I was like, an ebook? What's an ebook? And
Mm.
because I thought at the time, like an ebook was like a legit, you had to be an author and a publisher and,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I could tell this one kind of wasn't. So I clicked on it and I purchased it. I can't remember what the ebook was, but I don't know what it was. And, 20, $30 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I was like, hold on, this is just a Microsoft Word document
Mm.
saved as a PDF. I'm like, I'm a technological dunce, especially back then. But I know how to open Microsoft Word and press save as PDF, and now I've got an ebook. So I'm
Yeah.
like, hold on, this can be the online course. It doesn't need to be a website and $20,000.
Yeah.
Why don't I just create a manual, a solid manual
Mm.
on Microsoft Word and then save it as a PDF. And now
Mm.
I've got an ebook. So that's what me and Trav did. We
Brilliant.
created a solid manual
Yep.
and not like, because even now I think ebooks changed. I think now an ebook is just like a one-page thing to get your email address, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we created a manual. Like this was like 100 pages
Right.
of everything you need to run a successful bootcamp.
Mm-hmm.
So I put that together and then we're like, yeah, it's good, but it looks like a Microsoft Word document, right? So I was like, okay, how can I make it look better? I took the night off work and I was like, I'm just going to go on and put borders and headings and whatever.
Right.
I took the night off work, went on Microsoft Word, tried to make it look better. I made it look worse because if you're not good at Microsoft
Yeah.
Word, the things indent, the colors change, like it's a hard thing, right? So I made it look worse, and I was like, oh, what am I going to do? I went on Google, try and get some tips. And then I found the website Fiverr, right?
No, yes.
Now, and once again, back in 2020, I think most people listening to this will know what Fiverr is. If
Mm-hmm.
not, it's
Mm.
like a freelance website where you can get stuff done. But
Yep.
in those days, it wasn't that big, and I wasn't in that
Mm.
world. So and it also was different then. Back then, you could get anything you want done for $5. That's why it
Mm.
was
Mm.
called Fiverr. I think in the UK they say a fiver or £5.
Yep.
You
That's
could get
right.
anything you want for £5, and that's called a fiver in
Yeah.
the UK. You'd probably know better than me, Rich.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
But
right. Yeah.
yeah. So, went on this website because there were people that would edit your document for a fiver, right?
Yep.
But I kind of got lost because there were people doing everything on there. And I remember this one. There was this one guy on there that said he would slap himself in the face for a fiver. I was like, what? I was like, this can't be real. And I'm like, who buys this stuff? But I got curious and I was like, I'm going to buy it just to see if he actually does it. So,
Brilliant.
so I bought it, right? And then within like 5 minutes, he sent it over. And I was like, what? This guy did it that quick. So I checked my email and he's like, hello, I'm going to slap myself in the face for the fiver, and slapped himself in the face. And he didn't go soft, like he went hard.
All
And I
right.
was like, man, I'm like, I feel sorry for this guy. Like, what a loser, like having to slap yourself on the face. But then I got thinking about it and I was like, hold on. He didn't like introduce himself or say hello, Jono, or personalize it at all. And I'm
Yeah.
like, hold on, let me go back to this YouTube video that he sent me of him slapping himself in the face. And it had 100,000 views. So this guy slapped himself in the face once, right? Put it on YouTube as an unlisted video, and then sold it for £5 to 100,000 people. That guy made $500,000
Brilliant.
by slapping himself in the face. And the guy looked like a loser, like no
Yeah.
personality, no charisma, no sense of humor, English second language. And he made $500,000. That's like $1 million. And I know Fiverr takes a cut, whatever, but
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
not ruin a good story. For slapping yourself in the face, he made a lot of money. And
Yeah.
that there were a couple of things there. I was like, what the hell is my excuse? If that guy can do that, what the
Yeah.
hell is my excuse, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Number two, it showed me the power of kind of like doing the thing once and then never again. I had
Yeah.
like that was kind of the
Yeah.
plan with online.
Yeah.
When I went to go online, it was more kind of more a bit more fear. It was a bit more like I'll do this thing and it's done once, and if people buy it, great. If they don't, whatever. I've done it once. Who
Yeah.
cares?
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
least make some sales from it. Was more that, but this kind of even made that even more. I was like, wow, you can do this thing once and just sell it so many times and make so much money from it. So it was that. But it also showed me the power of just an unlisted YouTube video, because I was like, hold on, why don't I add some videos to this ebook? Why does it have to be all written? Why don't I just get my phone out and take some videos of me and Travis explaining some things, me and
Mm.
Travis demonstrating some videos, and we
Mm.
just we create a YouTube account, which is free, right? We put it as unlisted, so you can only see that link if people do it,
Yeah.
and we'll
Yeah.
put it into that ebook there. Right. Now there's better ways to do it. There's free
Sure.
software, whatever. But like at the
Yeah.
time, I was like, this makes it twice as good,
Mm.
because now, what if you're not a reader? You don't even have to
Mm.
read the thing
Mm.
anymore. You can just watch these videos, right? Or you can do
Yeah.
both. Or there's
Yeah.
some things that are explained better in writing. There are some things that are watched in video. So
Mm.
like, that's great. So that, and then also found someone on Fiverr that would edit it for $5 and make it look better, right?
Brilliant.
So because of that, we now had this manual that looked, I'm not going to say amazing, like we paid someone a fiver on Fiverr, right? But it looked better than just a Microsoft Word doc. You had some headings, some footers, some page numbers, some
Mm.
from fonts, whatever.
Mm.
It also had some videos in there as well. So now all of a sudden, like, it was something I was somewhat proud of. I was like, okay, this looks way better than Microsoft Word document. So put that together, got it registered with it was Fitness Australia at the time. They're now
Yeah.
Active. Got it registered with them, got some CECs, went on their website, and I was kind of like, all right, let's just whatever, I'll worry about this later. It's there, it's done, it's got CECs, I'll worry about marketing it later. And then like within a day or something, someone called me and they were like, hey, I want to do this course of yours. And I was, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't even know how they found it at the time. But I was, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, I'm just in a meeting. Let me call you back. Yeah, give me your email or whatever, and I'll call you back. I'll give you your email, phone number. I can't remember what it was exactly. So got it. Then got off the phone. I was like, hold on, how do I actually sell this thing? Like how
Yeah.
do I actually take payment to someone over the other side of the world? Yeah, other side of the country. So went on my friend Google, and they were
Yeah.
like, "Hey, PayPal's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Here's how you create a custom PayPal link."
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, just manually sent that person over a PayPal link, which was
Yeah.
like, "Yep, here it is. Go and pay."
Brilliant.
And they purchased it. All right, and that happened. There were about one or two, I can't remember the exact numbers, but there were about two or three people a month that would just do that. Like with no
Sure.
marketing from myself, they would
Mm,
just find it on the Fitness Australia website. And either, I think I got smarter and at least put a PayPal link there or something.
mm, mm,
Um, but whatever, they were making a couple sales a month just from doing that. And there was one part of it was luck. I realized that at that time, the courses were listed in alphabetical order of the name, and the course was called Four Steps to a Successful Boot Camp, and
mm.
numbers with the number four, and
Yes.
numbers were above there. So
Yeah.
if someone went on the Fitness Australia website, it was the first course there. That was no
Brilliant.
marketing, or you couldn't pay for it. That was just dumb luck. But but it's still a good lesson. Like I do see some other
Mm,
directories that are still like that in different
mm,
places. So I
mm.
think that's just a good tactical trick. Like if you are getting on directories and you see they are in alphabetical order, put a
Go with
number
a
in front
number.
of it. Yeah, put a symbol, like
Yeah.
whatever your business is, you can find a way to put a
Mm,
number there,
mm,
or
mm.
whatever. Um, anyway, so that happened. And at the stage, at the first couple, I was really scared because we had a feedback form at the end of it, right? And I still remember the first feedback form I got. I was so scared because, and also we were selling this course for, I think it was 250, $300, something like that. And it was essentially a Microsoft Word document that we'd paid someone $5 on Fiverr to edit.
Mm, mm.
I was a bit scared. I was scared on two things. I was scared of, like, number one, people were going to be like, I paid you $300 and you've sent me a Microsoft Word document. Like, you're a scammer. Give me a refund, yada,
Yeah.
yada, yada. I was scared of
Yeah.
that. And then I was also scared of, like, I knew that I was good at running a boot camp in my world. Out of the 75 instructors at the boot camp, I knew it was statistically proven that I was in
Mm,
the top
mm.
top echelon there, but I was a little bit worried, like, oh, does that equate to the whole fitness industry? Am I going to do this course and someone's like, because also the first person that purchased it was from Western Australia, which kind of
Yeah.
added to it. I was,
Yeah.
oh man, like it's on the other side of Australia. Like, are they going to look at it and be like, oh, this stuff was so basic. I already knew all this stuff.
Mm.
So I was scared on two of those things.
Sure.
But the feedback came back great. It was like, oh, this is
Right.
so good. It was so many good little tips. It was
Mm,
great that it was online. I could do it at my own
mm,
pace, my own
mm,
time. I didn't have to go somewhere. Da 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 da.
mm, mm.
And at that stage, it was just like, whew, thank God.
It
Like I wasn't even
works.
happy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was more relief.
Yeah.
And then I got the second one. Same thing. I was so scared to open it, but similar kind of feedback. And I was like, okay. Then I got the third one. I was a bit more confident. I was like, yeah, let me read it. And the third one said something similar.
Okay.
So from there, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm confident with this thing.
Mm,
I'm happy
mm,
to hang my hat on it and say,
mm,
every single person that's done it loved
mm.
it. And obviously not every single person for the rest of the time, but I knew that it was the first three people that did it gave it amazing reviews. It
Yeah.
doesn't totally suck. You
Yeah.
know, they're happy
Yeah.
to pay for an ebook. They're happy for the level of content. Let me kind of grow this thing.
Mm, mm,
So
mm.
from there, it was like, okay, great. Let's put together another course, another course, another course. That was kind of one stream we did. Once we had the system, we know how to
Yeah.
put together a
Yeah.
course. Let's just, keep putting together more and more and more.
Yeah.
And then the other side of things was the marketing. It was kind of like, hey, we're making, two, three sales doing absolutely nothing.
Mm,
We've just put this on a website that you get for paying for it anyway. It's listed on there and you can make sales doing nothing. Imagine if we actually did something. And that's
mm.
probably another story, right? It's kind of like, what do we do? What do
Sure.
we do? But I know we don't kind of have time for that today. But
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Yeah.
just to simplify for the listeners. It was like, right, that's how we did one course. But then it was like, cool, now we can sort of, I guess, scale that way. And it's like, just keep creating course and course and course.
Yeah.
Which isn't always a good thing though, because, creating more courses doesn't always lead to more sales. You also need to do the other stuff as well. But it was
Sure.
like, great. Um, it was more proof of concept. It was like we didn't just go straight and be like, let's spend all this money on marketing
Mm,
if we don't know that it works. It's
Mm.
kind of like we know that it's working. If it gets in front of the right people, they buy it and they love it. So how can we just get in front of the right people? And then it was,
Sure.
right, let's learn Facebook ads. Right, let's put together a Facebook group. Right, let's learn email marketing. Right, let's learn how to sell over the phone. Right, let's learn how to run a webinar. All right, let's learn how to put together a website. Right, let's learn how to SEO optimize that website. Right, let's learn Google Ads. It's just kind of like
Sure.
whole different conversation, right?
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
think that the
yeah.
message for the listeners there is more: if you got something that kind of works, just work on the next one thing. And in our case, there, in just that simple situation, it was Facebook ads
Mm,
because it was like, all right, cool. How can we just get this in front of more people?
mm,
Right,
mm,
Facebook ads is the easy way
mm.
to do that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Sorry,
And
man,
it's
I blabbed
grown.
on for the
That's
whole
all right.
40 minutes, man.
And it's grown from there. I tried to do a count of the number of courses on your website, and I lost count at 14, and that was just on one of the pages. And then I realized
Yeah.
there were other pages with other courses. And then, of course, like you said at the beginning, you've got the American market, you've got the
Yep.
Canadian market,
Yep.
Aussie and New Zealand. How
Yep.
many are there in total? Do you know?
Yeah, yeah. So I think there's about 60 different courses that
Jeez.
are registered Australia and New Zealand
Yeah.
because we always get it done Australia first.
Yeah.
But then New Zealand's kind of got a deal, you pay reps once and then you
Yeah.
can get as many courses as you want. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially if they're registered OS active, they pretty
Yeah.
much just approve them,
Yeah. Yeah.
The other countries are a little bit, I'm not gonna say harder, but what we do is we only register the ones that sell really well over
Yeah.
here in those other countries. Because otherwise
Yeah.
the fees add up.
Sure.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
about $500 to get a course approved. We've got 60 of them, like I think that's
Yeah. Yeah.
30K just in Australia.
Sure.
And also with that as well, just a note there, and this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier. Of those 60 courses, there's probably about 15 that sell really well and about the other
Mm,
whatever's
mm,
45 or whatever
yeah.
that just kind of they make a few sales
Mm,
but not the same. So Australia is
mm,
kind of like our test market where it's
yeah.
like, right, what sells well here? Cool. If it sells well in Australia, let's
Yeah.
go UK,
Sure.
Canada, USA.
Right. 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 Smart. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So are you always sort of refining? Do you get to a point where you go, that hasn't made any sales for a month or
Yep.
2 months or 3 months, and go, right, cull it?
Yeah. So usually more 2 years though. So a course will
Okay.
get registered for 2 years. That's
Oh,
the
I see.
general thing. You get it
Yeah.
registered for
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
So we'll run it for 2 years, and if it doesn't make, if it doesn't make a significant amount of sales, it's
Mm,
not worth it. It's taking up
yeah.
space. See you later.
Yeah.
Bye.
Sure. Sure. So I
Yeah.
suppose that's an ongoing thing. You'd be reviewing it every so often to make sure it's doing what it needs to do for you from a business point of view.
Yep. Yep. And,
So
and
what?
even with
What?
that, I was even going to add there, Rich, like
Yeah.
the trends change as well. So let's say, for example, like 10 years ago, one of the best selling courses was social media,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because no one knew how to use it in
Mm,
those days.
mm,
They're like, oh, this is the next thing, let's go and buy it.
mm.
Now, like that's one of the worst selling courses
Yeah.
because yeah, well, it's
Everyone's
because it's
learned.
more well, it's more like people are like, how can I get off social media? You know? So I think that would like honestly, I think the better course now would be how can I grow my business without using social media
Without,
or spend
yeah,
less
yeah.
time on social media. So, and obviously
Okay.
there's AI. We've just released an AI course that's
Mm,
obviously hot at the moment.
sure.
But I think that's like, and also now with social media, it's got to be more specific.
Mm,
So let's say, for example, I think if we put together, like a Facebook ad course, that would sell better than a social media. Like social media is too
sure.
general these days,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
There's a ton
Yeah.
of platforms out there. It depends who you're talking to and what you're trying to achieve. And yeah, yeah,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah. So what's the future for FEO? I mean, obviously you're refining and adding all the time. Where do you see things going? Is it same process?
Probably, yeah, a little bit different to be honest. So I think the way I look at it anyway, I want to get the CEC side of things as streamlined as possible, and then
Yeah,
essentially bring someone else on to manage it. So that's kind of always my business goal is to get it running without me.
sure.
And it's always an interesting one because especially with fitness education online, it started very much me and Travis, like
Mm.
dancing bears up the front. Here's us doing
Yeah,
live
yeah.
videos. Here's us speaking at FitX and FileX or whatever. So, but like if I'm running a business where I'm the face, I need
Mm,
to always be there.
mm, mm.
So that's that side of things, kind of streamline that.
Sure.
Same thing with the certifications in Australia, streamline that as well. Um, and what we're doing with the certifications at the moment is kind of similar to what we did with the CECs. So we've got FEO Academy, where we sell our Cert 3 and 4, but we've also created a women's fitness education, which is essentially a similar Cert 3 and 4 to what we sell, but
Hmm.
we've also added on some bonus CEC courses from Miss Wright, who I'm sure, like, she's our
Yep.
partner in that side of things.
Yes.
So it's like, hey, do our Cert 3 and 4, but you also get access to a closed Facebook group that Mish and Danny run, and
Yep.
also give, tips there specific to women's fitness, health, and
Mm,
fitness.
mm.
Um, you also get a monthly webinar with either Mish or Danny or an expert that they bring on speaking
Okay.
about a specific topic on women's fitness.
Yep.
And you also get a bunch of CEC courses as well.
Okay.
And I'm completely out of that one. I can't even be in
Yeah.
there, like I
Mm,
can't be I'm in the group and whatever, but I don't
mm,
even
mm.
like the posts,
Sure.
so it's more that side of things. It's more like,
Okay.
how can we run things without me being there?
Mm, mm.
Without Travis being there, or
Yeah.
and that way we've got kind of here's the CEC side of things that runs itself without us there. Here it is over in North America that runs itself without us there. Here it is. Here's a version of it over here that kind of runs something there. So it's
Sure.
more that side of things. Yeah. So it'll
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
yeah, probably different certification. And even with the CECs, it'll be like someone wants to put together a CEC course, great, no dramas. But it'll also be a bit more on them to kind of promote it as opposed to us.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stay course, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, when you're talking about other countries, do you have is it an Australian website that they're finding, or do you set up a Canadian website, an
Yeah.
American website, a British website?
Yep. Yep. So different websites
Yeah.
for a few different reasons. Number one, from a marketing side of things, it's easier to rank in the UK if you have a .co.uk, right? If
Right.
I've got my .com.au, it's
Mm,
very hard to rank in the UK for that.
sure.
And then even just not even the domain, but it's kind of the language on the page as well, which
Mm,
is which is both a marketing and a sales side of things.
mm,
Like if
mm.
I've got a website, let's just say the Australian website was our first one, probably our biggest one. If I've got that website and I know it's just for Australians and New Zealanders, I can really optimize that. And all the language on that, it's in Australian English. I'm talking about OS Active. I'm
Yeah.
talking about reps. I'm talking about how to be a personal trainer in Australia. I'm talking
Yeah.
about how many CECs you need with OS Active. I'm talking about the different registration bodies in Australia. I'm talking about the different fitness conferences in Australia. Like
Sure.
if the language on there is so targeted to Australia and it's
Mm,
a
mm,
.com.au, it's
mm.
going to rank higher in the Google rankings. But also someone lands on that from Australia, New Zealand, they know exactly what it is. They know it's in Australian dollars. They know how many CCs with that there.
Yeah.
Um, if I was to try and get everything on there, and it's like, right, it's this price in Australian dollars, but this price in Great Britain pounds, and
Mm,
this in Canadian dollars, and this CCs if you're with HandFit Pro, and this if you're
yeah.
with SimSpa, and it's just like
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
would be a
Too much.
mess for people to, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's the Australian, more areas. There's an
Yeah.
Australian New Zealand website. There's a North America, because North America is similar to Australia and New Zealand. It's
Mm,
kind of like if you're in Canada, like in New Zealand, it's a .com.au. You kind of assume it's Australian dollars. Don't
yeah.
need to say it.
Yeah.
Similar over there. If it's a US website, Canadians kind of assume it's you, or it says it anyway, but they're
Mm,
not, it's not super weird if you're a Canadian and you go to a website that's in US dollars.
mm,
And then it's
mm.
a lot of Canadians are also kind of registered with the American bodies. So that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, the UK one there. So it's like three different
Sure.
websites. A
Okay.
little bit more work, but wouldn't change it for the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Smart. Smart.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think I could probably keep asking you lots of website questions till the cows come home, but that's probably not going to be as interesting for our listeners. What I did want to ask is you alluded to it earlier about the that taking accountability, taking
Mm,
responsibility for yourself. I think that's a big one, and I think when you've been on that journey and you've realized what behaviors are required to do that, you
mm.
see it so clearly in other people or not when
Yep.
it's in other people.
Yep.
And that's why I like it. It's such a good tip. But what others have you got? What other things from a business continuity or business sustainability point of view, behaviors? Again, you've talked about some of the education that you did, the
Yep.
courses that you've done. It's an obvious one that we need to educate ourselves, but what would Jono's versions be?
Okay, so I look at it a few different angles. So I think the first thing you want to, yes, I think without doubt, the first thing is kind of like responsibility and accountability.
Yeah, yeah,
And I can't drum that home enough. Like if something
yeah,
happens, it's
yeah,
100% your fault. Um, and also got to drum in whether it's right or wrong. Like it doesn't help you to blame someone else, and even little things like, let me think of an example. It's kind of like, I mean, an easy one is, you're driving to the gym or you're driving to a client or whatever. Like my kind of philosophy was I would always get to the session or the boot camp half an hour early, right?
mm,
And I
mm,
did that because I knew that there could be traffic, I could get in an accident, and these things all happen once. There was one
yeah.
morning where like, there was traffic and someone hit me from behind and I
Jeez.
couldn't open my boot to get my boot camp equipment out, but it was okay because it was like I'd already planned for this. So I was like, right, I was going to get there half an hour early.
Yeah,
Sweet, I'm only here 15 minutes early. Oh, what a shame,
sure.
And I can't do the session I had planned. No dramas because, I've already planned for the body weight backup session that I can
Yeah,
use if this situation
yeah,
happens. So,
yeah.
it would have been very easy for me to cancel. Hey guys, sorry, I'm in a car accident. I can't open my boot, da 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 da. And it wouldn't have been
Mm,
wrong. Right. So I
mm,
think that's
mm,
kind of the message as well. Like
mm,
any
mm.
single thing that happens, it's going to be your advantage. You're going to be your advantage to take responsibility, right or wrong.
Yeah,
The second thing I think for people starting off is just crazy levels of support. And there's one quote that I actually learned back at that first conference was
yeah,
essentially nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
yeah. I like
Right.
that. Yeah, yeah,
And I am an exercise physiologist. All right. I don't practice it, but I'm qualified. And
sure.
when I first started running a boot camp, that was kind of my selling point. It's like, oh, I'm smarter than everyone. I'm an exercise physiologist. Da 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 da. No one cared. All right. Um, as soon as I switched that to be like, how can I care more than other personal trainer? That's probably the thing there. It's like, oh yeah, all well and good to take responsibility, but you got to actually do something about it, right? Like it's no good just to sit there and be like, yep, it was my fault. Like good, but what are you going to do about it, right?
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think
totally.
yeah, so that quote there,
Yeah, I
and I
like
think
it.
it's an important one for PTs because I feel that every PT thinks that they do that, right?
Mm, mm,
So it's kind of like, and it's always a good question in the FEO Facebook group. So if your goal is to be the most supportive trainer in the world, I remember asking not too long ago, hey, whatever it was. And a lot of people were saying, hey, here's the things I do that make me the most supportive trainer. But everyone was saying the same things.
mm.
I
Yeah.
text my
So
client
it's
after the session. Yeah. So then all of a
yeah,
sudden that's just the baseline,
yeah, yeah.
so it's kind of like, yeah. So I think that's a big point there.
Mm, mm, mm.
That's a huge one. I think the other one in terms of getting better. Now this is an interesting one, but I'll try and I'll explain it in a few different ways.
Yeah.
There's
Mm.
It's called the razor's edge theory, right? And this is essentially, I heard Tony Robbins speak about it,
Okay.
and he was like, look, in today's world, if you're good at what you do, what happens? And actually, I'll ask you. It is a trick question, but I'll ask you anyway because it's funnier if we do this. So I'll ask this question, Rich. Today's world, if you're good at what you do, if you're a good personal trainer, what's probably going to happen to you?
You'll do okay.
I'd even say you won't even last if you're just good. All
Yeah,
right. I'd
yeah,
say I'd say in the fitness industry today, like if you're a good personal trainer, you're going to be out of the industry 2 or 3 years. You get a full-time job, you get a better paying job.
sure.
Like
Yeah,
it's just too competitive, right?
yeah,
And the
yeah.
way Tony Robbins says it is he's like, I was speaking to someone the other day and they were like, oh, Tony, I got fired from my job. I don't know why I got fired. I was good at what I do. And Tony's like, that's the problem. You're good at what you do. Right. So the better question is if you're an excellent personal trainer,
Mm.
what kind of results do you get? Trick question again, but I'll ask it anyway.
Yeah,
If
well
you're an excellent,
then you're going to survive probably.
exactly. If you're an excellent personal trainer, you probably have a good business.
Mm.
You'll do okay, right? But then he keeps going up.
Mm.
If you're an outstanding personal trainer, right, then you'll get excellent results, right? But then he goes even higher still. If you are like the top 1%, you get unbelievable results, so much better than anyone else. And he used like Usain Bolt as an example, because a few years ago when I heard it, whatever, he was kind of like, Usain Bolt at the
Mm.
time was, one of the
Mm.
best athletes in the world, was winning the 100 meters all the time.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most successful household names in the world at the time. All right. And you didn't even know the guy coming second. Right. And the difference between them is like a
Yeah.
fraction of
Yeah. Hundredths of
yeah,
a second. Yeah.
and you didn't even know the guy coming second. But you can go deeper, right? That guy coming second is probably a hero in his own country. He's probably one of the most famous people in his own country, right? And then you keep going down. Even that person that came eighth, for them to make the final, are probably a hero in the in. So like at the bottom kind of rug, it's very
Mm.
competitive. It's so hard, da 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 da. But as you keep going up and up and up, just those little differences make yourself a lot better. So I think
Mm.
that's the key
Mm.
there. What can you
Mm.
do to just springboard yourself? And I think the answer early on is, I don't know if it's necessarily education, but it's kind of everything revolved around like whether it's education but also implementation, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
like what are
Yeah.
you going to do to
Yeah.
get yourself to that top?
Mm. Mm.
And
Mm.
at the start, it's the things that other people don't want to do. Here's another good quote I heard ages ago. I was into when I was really into that Tony Robbins kind of world. He gave us this audio CD or something, and it was called the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people, or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was all about it opened up and it's like, hey, there's one thing that successful people do that unsuccessful people don't do. And I'm like, oh, let me hear this thing. Let me hear this thing. I don't want to be these losers, these unsuccessful people. What does this thing do? And it was essentially this. Essentially, successful people do the things that unsuccessful people don't want to do. And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, okay, but
Yeah.
what are these things? What are these things
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
losers do to try and do them? And he's like, it's the same thing nobody wants to do, right? Whatever it is. Let's say you're on a fitness journey, right? Let's say you're a bit overweight, whatever. You want to lose some weight. What are the difference between the people that are successful and unsuccessful? The people that are successful do those things the unsuccessful people don't want to do. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't really want to go to the gym today, but hey, I'm going to do it anyway.
Mm. Mm.
Hey, I'm at the gym today. I don't really want to, do what I should be doing, but you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. Hey, I know I should probably having this meal today. I don't really want to have it, but I'm going to do it. And I'm not saying be extreme. It's probably a bad example in fitness these days, but more the philosophy there. And it's the same
Yeah.
kind of thing with
Yeah.
business. All right.
Mm.
Let's say, for example, I want to be successful at business. The last thing I probably want to do is invest in $1,000 course. All right. But I know that if 99% of people won't do it, and I do, and actually New Zealand's a good example of this just for my own kind of thing. We used to have a big conference here in Australia called Filex, right?
Yeah.
And I'd go
Mm.
every year. Um, but when I'd go, you know who I'd see? Every other trainer in Australia would go to this thing. So you're not really getting ahead,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, then I was like, well, what can I do differently? What am I doing that other people aren't doing? Fitex, right?
Go to New
I was like,
Zealand.
oh yeah, hold on. There's a conference in New Zealand, and especially back then, I was apart from the presenters, I was one of the only Australians that would go
Mm.
as a as a
True.
as a student.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not saying FitX is better than Filex or New Zealand is better than Australia. Probably is actually, but actually I shouldn't say that. Cut that
It
bit.
is.
But the point there is that it's
Yeah.
different. I
Yeah.
went to New Zealand and I was meeting different people that people in Australia didn't meet.
Exactly.
I would be hearing something in a slightly different angle. I was seeing how the culture was different.
Mm.
What's hot
Mm.
over there that's not hot over here.
Mm. Mm.
So yeah, that's I think that the message there. And I think in terms for personal trainers, the two ways that you can kind of do the things that do the things that unsuccessful people don't want to do is essentially money and time. They're the two things no one wants to spend, right? Like, if you've got the choice of spending your money, like,
Mm.
you want to
Mm.
spend it on fun stuff. Same thing with your time. You want
Yeah.
to spend your time either
Yeah.
relaxing or with your friends and family, right? But the person that spends those two things more that the other person won't is going to get ahead. And
Yeah.
we'll go deeper on that. Like it depends on your life goals and
Yes.
your balance and whatever. But that's the simplified version. If you want to get
Mm.
ahead,
Mm.
you're
Mm.
gonna have to spend money or time. And
Mm.
even just to cut off on that, I heard a good quote from Emma Barry. She's a
Oh
Kiwi.
yeah,
Do you know who she
yeah,
is, Rich? Yeah,
yeah. She's
yeah.
in the US now.
Yeah. I heard her speak at a conference in Australia, I think. And she was kind of like, if you want to see what you're kind of passionate about, or I can't remember the exact words she used, but if you want to see um what you value, sorry, what you value. She's like,
Yeah,
people say they value these things. Do you want to know what you really value? Look at your calendar and see what you've got booked in. And whatever you've got booked in the most is what you value. And
what you value.
also look at your bank account statement. Where are you
Mm.
spending your money? Wherever you're spending your money is what you value. So you may say you value your health and your fitness, but look at your
Mm.
bank account. Where's the
Yeah,
money go? You may say
yeah.
you value your business. Where's your bank account going? You
Mm.
say you value your health. Look at your calendar. You say you value your business. Look at your calendar.
I like
Yeah.
that.
So
I like that.
they're my tips.
Calendar and bank account. That's brilliant, Jono. Hey, look, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I know that we said
That
we
was the
said we
wind up,
might
right?
we said we might go for 30, and we're pretty much on the hour already. So yeah, I
Hey, I
just want to
warned you.
thank you
I
for
want
your
for the
thank you
listeners.
for
I warned Rich. I was like, oh, if I blab on a bit long, just say, oh, I don't know where this is all we got time for, and he used it. He's like, this guy can
well,
go all day.
amazing. It's amazing how the clock can keep you honest. So I'm going
Yeah.
to use that as a cutoff point. But maybe we do a version 2 later, because I think like you say, you can explain a concept, but I think it requires that depth of explanation to really
Mm.
get a good understanding. And I can see that there's plenty of depth there. And really, time is against us. But it's been a brilliant hour, and I've really enjoyed listening and hearing your journey, and your honesty and your vulnerability about how it all started, and where you've the highs and the lows and the learnings that have gone along the way. And I think that's been really, really valuable.
Awesome. Nah, all good. Anytime, Richard. You know me. My
Awesome.
favorite subject is myself. So happy to come on and and talk about that at any time.
Awesome stuff. All right, thanks, John. I'll catch you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Rich.
Cheers.